Ooh, Jade. Oh, she does things. And I'm starting to learn new things about myself. Things that I never thought I'd discover. Alright, Jade. She is our newest Quantum Erudition character, and she is looking like one of the strongest characters in the Erudition category. She has tons of self-buffing abilities, as well as her ability to charge her follow-up attack is absolutely perfectly suited for matchups where there are tons of enemies. So today we're going to go through her kit. We're going to talk about Lightcones, we're going to talk about teams, we're going to talk about relics, we're going to talk about all that stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. First off is her basic attack, and this is a fairly unique basic attack because it's actually a blast attack. This is really good. I believe it is our first basic attack that is a blast attack that's not an enhanced basic attack. Someone can definitely let me know down in the comments if there is a basic attack that I'm forgetting that is also a blast attack. But the fact that she has a blast attack for her basic attack is very interesting, and it synergizes really well with her kit, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But now let's just go ahead and move on to her skill. Her skill is actually a support type skill. It's not a damaging type skill. When you cast this ability onto an ally, they become a debt collector. In doing so, they will get a speed increase of 30 for 3 turns. When the debt collector attacks, it will deal additional quantum damage equal to 25% of Jade's attack to all enemies hit. And then it also consumes 2% of their maximum HP. And then also, just like all HP drain moves, it cannot knock them out. Technically, Jade can cast this skill on herself and become the debt collector herself, but if she does so, she does not gain the speed boost effect, and also her attacks don't consume HP. Additionally, she cannot reuse her skill as long as a debt collector exists on the field. And like most new support type skills in the game, the duration of the buff will reduce by 1 at the start of every one of Jade's turn. So do note the difference there. This buff is not tied to the speed of the character that you cast it on, it's actually dependent on Jade's speed. This has some implications. Because of this, you may actually consider building Jade to not be very fast. Additionally, to maximize that additional quantum damage, then also some of her talents and some of her traces, you want to be buffing characters that can hit multiple targets at once. So this probably means that you don't want to be applying this to hunt type characters, and probably instead onto characters that have AoE type attacks, like erudition characters and, some other destruction characters and even some nihility characters. Characters that also have blast damage in their kit or action advancement in their kit could also be decent targets for this buff. But anyway, as it stands right now, the skills buffs don't really seem that strong, right? All it really does is that it deals additional quantum damage, as well as it gives a speed buff. But strap in, guys, because her kit is definitely a lot more nuanced than just that. But first, let's go ahead and move on to her ultimate and then her talent. Her talent is where things start to kind of tie together, and you'll see how she operates. But first, her ultimate is that she will deal quantum damage equal to 240% of her attack to all enemies on the field. At the same time, her follow-up attack from her talent will get a damage multiplier increase by 80% at talent level 10, and this enhancing effect can activate 2 times. So basically that just means her next 2 follow-up attacks will get boosted. Now her talent, this is kind of where everything starts to tie together. So, after Jade or an ally that had become the debt collector attacks, Jade gains 1 charge for each enemy target attacked. When the charge reaches 8, she will consume 8 charges to launch a follow-up attack. This deals 120% of Jade's attack to all enemies. She will also then gain 5 stacks of pawned asset when she launches her talent's follow-up attack. In the ideal scenario, you will actually get this buff before the talent actually does its damage, so that means you get the buff the first time she actually launches the attack and not subsequent follow-up attacks. And then each stack of pawn asset increases her crit damage by 2.4%, stacking up to 50 times. And so 5 stacks means that we will get a crit damage increase of 12%. And so the reason why her basic attack being a blast attack is so essential here is because her talent gets charged faster if Jade is able to hit multiple targets. Ideally, you actually hit 3 targets and then you gain 3 charges for her follow-up attack. Additionally, the charges on this talent can also overflow. So if you happen to hit a ton of enemies and it overflows past 8, the extra charges will roll over to the next 8 charges. So this is just a really super nice quality of life thing. And so basically characters that can attack really quickly and multiple times are going to be really, really good teammates for Jade. Characters that have follow-up attacks in their kit and that can hit multiple enemies are going to be the ideal candidate. So a character like Herta and maybe even Himiko are seemingly really good teammates for Jade right now. All right, now her technique. Her technique basically makes it so that enemies will not actively attack you. And then when you attack enemies that have been affected by her technique, Jade will instantly get 15 stacks of pawn asset at the start of battle, which is a 36% extra crit damage increase. And then it also does 50% of Jade's attack to all enemies. It should also be noted that pawn asset has no turn limit, so once you get it, you will keep it until the end of the battle. Now let's talk traces. Her first trace is that for each stack of the talent's pawned asset, it will also increase her attack by 0.5%. So if you max out her pawned asset stacks, you will get a 25% increase in attack. 5 stacks is when you launch her follow-up attack is a 2.5 increase to her attack, and then 15 is 7.5%. So basically at the start of battle, if you're using her technique, you'll get a 36% extra crit damage boost and a 7.5% extra attack boost. Her next trace is that when the battle starts, her action is advanced forward by 50%. This is just really good because we don't really want to be building Jade for speed, but by advancing her action by 50%, she can be the first one to act and then apply the debt collector buff onto an enemy so that she can immediately start to gain charges for her follow-up attacks. Her final trace is that when enemy targets enter combat, she will gain 1 stack of pawned asset, and then when a debt collector ally's turn starts, she additionally gains 3 stacks of pawned asset. So this also means that characters that are really fast are going to be good teammates for Jade so that she can stack as many pawned asset buffs as possible. She's really a character that starts to ramp up as the battle goes on and becomes absolutely insane once all of her buffs become maxed out. She is very much going to be the queen of erudition. And then her stat bonuses is an extra 22.4% quantum damage boost, 18% attack, and 10% effect res. Alright, now let's go over relics for Jade. So when it comes to relics, her number 1 best set is going to be the Quantum set, the Genius of Brilliant Stars. It's going to increase her quantum damage by 10%, as well as when they deal damage to the target enemy, it will ignore 10% of their defense, and if they have quantum weakness, it will give another 10%, so up to 20% defense ignoring for Jade. So very strong, very generic relic set for quantum characters in general, and it's going to be her best set. The Duke set is the next best set, increasing her follow-up attack damage by 20%, and then when they use a follow-up attack, it will increase their attack by 6% for each time that the follow-up attack does damage, up to 8 times, and lasts for 3 turns. So the reason why this one is not as good as the Quantum set is because the Quantum set applies to her entire kit. Although her follow-up attack is about 50% of her damage, just the fact that you get a defense ignoring mechanic as well as it applies to everything in her kit, this ends up being better in the long run. Now for planar ornament sets, Sigonia, the Unclaimed Desolation, is going to be the best. It's going to increase her crit rate by 4%. She needs crit rate because her kit is a bit lacking in crit rate. And then also for each enemy target that gets defeated, her crit damage increases by 4% up to 10 times. This means an extra 40% crit damage once maxed out. And so this is really good because just in general, as an erudition character, you'll be slaying enemies left and right. And then when you of course take her into content where there are waves and waves of enemies, you can reach that 10 stack count pretty easily. So overall, just very solid for Jade. And then of course, Inert Salsodo makes a comeback here. This is just a really great general planar ornament set, increasing crit rate by 8%. Again, she needs some crit rate, and then the crit rate reaches 50% higher. Her ultimate and follow-up attack damage increases by 15%. So those are 2 really important parts of her kit, so increasing the damage there is really good. However, I would choose this as an alternative if you don't have good Sigonia sets. Now, in terms of main stats, what we want to go for on the body piece is actually crit rate, because like I mentioned, she doesn't have too much crit rate within her kit naturally, but instead she has a ton of crit damage buffs. So you don't really need to worry about crit damage. You just let her kit kind of take care of it, and then you go all in crit rate. You want to hit, in my opinion, at least 70% so you can get consistent crit damage hits. And then when it comes to the boot, we actually don't want to go with speed. We don't want Jade to be too fast and have the debt collector buff kind of run out. And instead just go into damage and have the debt collector farm charges for Jade, and then have Jade kind of do her damage from follow-up attacks instead of from, say, her basic attack. Right, she doesn't actually need her turn to do damage. A lot of her damage is going to come from her ultimate, and then also from her talent, her follow-up attack. And then when it comes to the orb, we want to go with a quantum damage boost. She doesn't have too much damage boost within her kit, so generally when this happens, you want to boost the damage of the element of the character. However, usually when characters have a ton of damage bonus in their kit, attack percentage ends up being better, because remember, at the end of the day, you kind of want to balance all of the buffs in order to maximize your damage as best as possible. It's just how multiplication works. And then when it comes to the rope, it comes between attack percentage and energy regeneration rate. Since we are not going speed boots, the damage loss from running an ERR rope is not too bad. It's about 7% according to some calculations. And going ERR allows Jade to have a better rotation on her ultimate so that she can keep that buff on her talent. Remember, at talent level 10, it increases the multiplier by 80%, so that's quite large. So keeping uptime on the ultimate is really, really good. But of course, you can go with attack if you just happen to have better substats on it. So, right, just kind of go with whatever good substats you have and just make your decision based off of that. Don't go pulling your hair out trying to find the perfect ERR rope or the perfect attack rope. All right, now let's talk teams. Now, characters that have a lot of AoE in their kit are going to be one of her best teammates. Now, when we take a look at some of the 4-stars, they're going to be, I'm going to say, quote-unquote buffed because of Jade. So a character like Herta, who does a ton of follow-up attacks and can do it pretty quickly, is going to be a really good teammate for Jade, right? Once you get those enemies down to 50%, she lets off a follow-up attack, and then also her skill is an AoE, so you'll be able to farm charges pretty quickly with a character like Herta. And then maybe even a character like Pela, because she has a low energy and a fast charging ultimate, also very similar to Herta. But Pela has energy regeneration kind of built into her kit. Basically, when an enemy is defeated, she gets an extra 5 energy. So, and also her ultimate cost is only 110. So yeah, basically, Pela charges her ultimate really, really quickly, and it's also an AoE attack. So that means you'll be able to farm charges relatively quickly with Pela. And also she gives defense shred, so that's just pretty good damage. So, you know, just think about low energy characters that have AoE in their kit. Those are going to be decent characters for Jade to partner up with. And I would say that Jade kind of busts those characters. So even a character like Serval, she has a really low cost ultimate, only 100. And so Serval is, I would say, technically getting buffed. Like if you're a Serval main and you kind of want Serval to kind of go in, Jade is a decent partner. And then another really good character that's going to be able to pair up with Jade is Blade. Jade and Blade. Kind of rhymes. But anyway, the reason why this character is so good with Jade is because his attack is a blast attack once enhanced, and his talent is an AoE attack. So those are really good ways to farm charges for Jade. And also, remember that Jade drains the HP of the character that launches attacks. So theoretically, now go ahead and correct me if I am incorrect here, but he should get 2 stacks on his talent because Jade will drain his HP and then his skill will drain HP. Now again, if I'm wrong on that, please correct me in the comments. But theoretically, this allows Blade to get stacks a lot faster. And then say pair that with a Bronya or a Sparkle, and you're just going to give Blade more turns and just be able to get his talent even faster, and then likewise charge even more follow-up attacks for Jade. So Blade, Bronya, Jade, or Blade, Sparkle, Jade is looking like a pretty solid team. And then of course, just need to slot in your sustain character. Maybe something like a Fu Xuan for some extra crit rate. Now let's go ahead and talk Lightcones. Now, her signature Lightcone is going to be definitely hands down one of the best. It's a very strong Lightcone, and I'll go over the details on that. But basically, it fills in everything in her kit that she's missing. So first off, it increases her crit rate by 16%. And then when in battle, for every 20% crit damage that exceeds 120%, The damage of her follow-up attacks increases by 12% up to 4 times. So this means 48% damage bonus if you have 200% crit damage. And then when the battle starts, or when they use their basic attack, their ultimate and follow-up attacks ignore 20% of the target's defense. So, right, you got crit rate, you got damage bonus, and you have this defense ignoring mechanic all in this Lightcone. All things that she's kind of missing in her base kit. Just a very solid Lightcone. But now, alternatives are things like Night on the Milky Way, which is Himiko's Lightcone. So, every enemy on the field increases attack, and then when you break an enemy, you get a damage bonus. So, it's pretty good, as long as there are lots of enemies on the field, and there should be when you're bringing Jade into the fight, because that's where she excels at. The Birth of the Self is a decent one. It will increase your follow-up attack damage by 24% or 48% at S5, and then if the enemy's HP is below 50%, it's another 48% or 24%. So it's just a shit ton of damage bonus when all the conditions are met. Genius's Repose is a good one. It will increase attack. She doesn't really have many attack bonuses in her kit, so the attack increase is nice. And then the crit damage increases whenever you defeat an enemy, and you'll be defeating enemies, of course. And that also goes with the Sigonia and Ornament set, so they kind of go hand in hand. However, she already does have a ton of crit damage in her kit, so right, you want to balance crit damage, you want to balance damage bonus, you want to balance kind of all that to make sure you maximize her damage. So crit damage is not really something that we are looking for particularly, but it's not like it's bad. And then Seriousness of Breakfast, the free Lightcone, increases damage bonus, and it also gives her an attack buff whenever you defeat an enemy. So again, just very solid. Damage bonus is good because she doesn't really have that in her kit, and then also attack bonuses are good because she doesn't have that in her kit. Peaceful Day, the Battle Pass Lightcone, she has a 140 cost energy, so she will get a sizable damage boost from this Lightcone. The Day the Cosmos Fell is an attack bonus, which is good, but then also a crit damage bonus just for attacking at least 2 enemies. So very solid and a big crit damage boost, but as I explained earlier, she already has a bunch of crit damage, so it's not as valuable as, say, attack and damage bonus. But overall, those are all of the Lightcones that she can use, and they're all pretty decent alternatives. Now, I should mention something about her Lightcone. Although it's really good, you might be wondering whether you should go the Lightcone or if you should go E1. And here are my thoughts on it. Although her Lightcone is really good and it fills in a ton of gaps in her kit, her E1 is just so strong. It's so good. It will increase the damage of her follow-up attack by 32%, and then also when the deck collector attacks an enemy and hits either 2 or 1 enemy targets, she will additionally gain 1 or 2 points of charge. So it just allows her to gain charges faster and also better in a single target environment. So IMO, I would go E1 over Lightcone. And this kind of brings up the point that yes, her single target matchup is not amazing, but it's not like it's terrible. It's just obvious and clear that she's designed to be an erudition character. So the more enemies there are, and if there are tons and tons of waves of enemies, Jade is just going to absolutely massacre that type of content. And in my opinion, there has been a lot of just general combat events and typically just events in general when there is combat where there's multiple waves of enemies. And also there's pure fiction, right? So there's plenty of content in there where there's waves of enemies and just tons of enemies. So Jade is going to excel in that content. And of course, MOC, it's just very matchup dependent. Sometimes you get floors that have multiple enemies and also enemies that summon smaller mobs. So she's going to do fine in that content. But then of course, there are bosses that are just solo by themselves. They don't summon anything. And so you're kind of gonna be having a hard time. But with that said, some of the bosses that are quantum weak are usually summoning enemies, like the Bug, the Swarm Disaster boss. He summons a ton of little miniature flies, and so Jade is just going to absolutely destroy that matchup. And so a lot of the bosses that are just single target, they typically aren't weak to quantum, so you wouldn't really be bringing Jade anyway. Anyway guys, that's all that I have for you in this video today. If it helped you out and you made it this far, consider leaving a like and even subscribing to the channel. Definitely got more content on the way, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.